In my previous video, I talked about the fact that Americans are essentially unaware, for the most part, of what Anglicanism is today. Despite there being a number of very influential, notable Anglicans in church history, most people would even actually know them by name, yet not by their affiliation with Anglicanism, but they would know them for some other reason. To begin with, I figured I would kind of kick off the series, beginning with a name, an individual that I know that pretty much everybody watching this will know, and that is C.S. Lewis. Clive Staples Lewis was born in 1898, died in 1963. He was probably the most popular Christian writer of at least the latter half of the 20th century. You can ask Christians pretty much from any denomination, and you're going to get a very high percentage of people who actually do know who C.S. Lewis is, probably even maybe read one or more of his books. He's known probably best by Christians for his writings such as the Chronicles of Narnia and Mere Christianity. That's another big one of his. He wrote many others, as I will tell you in a minute. Born in Ireland, sent to England for boarding school as a child, and he goes on to Oxford. Eventually, he actually becomes a professor there at Oxford of English literature, Oxford and Cambridge. He marries Joy Gresham in 1956. But she soon dies about 4 years later in 1960. And that relationship, that marriage, that romance is, if you want to see that portrayed quite nicely, is in the movie Shadowlands. If you look at the movie Shadowlands, that's C.S. Lewis's, at least the life with Joy at that time. He was never formally trained in theology, which surprises a lot of people, but his writing on theological topics is notable. And popular because he's able to actually take the difficult concepts of theology and really make them accessible, make them understandable to the average reader, the lay reader, the untrained, theologically untrained reader. He didn't grow up as a Christian either. He describes his conversion as very slow and coming over a number of years. He wrote between 65 and 70 books. Some of them you're going to know by name. I'll list a few now. The Screwtape Letters. These are a series of letters written by a demon named Screwtape. And he's writing to his demon nephew, Wormwood, who is a novice who's kind of put in charge of this person who's referred to as the patient. And he is supposed to tempt this human to make him go astray from what he believes and kind of drag him closer to hell and away from heaven. You have the Lewis's book called Miracles, written in 1947. This is Lewis challenges naturalism in this, of course, which would make sense. Naturalism is the belief that everything in the world is just natural, has a natural explanation to it. There's no supernatural element to it at all. He addresses the possibility of miracles actually taking place and has a great argument for it. He blames modern thinkers, really, too, or modern at his time, for making people believe that miracles were not real and they couldn't happen. Again, Mere Christianity, written in 1952. Excellent book, one of his most popular books. Most people have read that one. This book is based on actually a collection of radio addresses that he gave during the Second World War to actually give some kind of comfort and hope for people during the war. Chronicles of Narnia, again, I mentioned that one as well. Chronicles of Narnia, written between 1950, 1956. And this is probably most notably, is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's movies are made of this one and some of the others. That one's one of the most popular ones. It's sort of a fantasy story, but with kind of Christian overtones, perhaps is the way to describe it. He wrote The Great Divorce in 1945. That is a group of people traveling on a bus from hell up to heaven, where they're invited actually to stay there to get a taste of it and remain there, and only one person chooses to do so. And actually, a stage play was made of The Great Divorce, is actually in circulation as I'm recording this, by the Fellowship for the Performing Arts. They've done a great stage play version of it, very minimal in sets and props, as you can probably guess, but very, very accurate and good to really stays close to how the book is written. Theologically, some use Lewis's arguments in their apologetic encounters. The argument for the deity of Christ is one of the popular ones. Lewis didn't formulate this argument, but he certainly puts his own kind of spin on it, his own take on it, with his own special wit and wisdom. If you know his writings, its original form for that argument, this argument can be probably traced back to the 1800s or so, but Lewis has his own unique way of giving it to us. And the argument is known something as like the liar, lunatic, or Lord argument, or what you call the trilemma, which states basically that Jesus can only be one of these and nothing else. The things that Jesus said were not what a good moral teacher would say, Lewis argues. So he's more than that. He argues that Jesus was either a liar and all that he said was untrue, or he was a lunatic and all that he said was about himself was delusional, and we have no reason to follow him, or he is Lord. That's the only other option, Lewis says, that there is. If he's Lord, then we have to follow him, we have to fall down and worship him. Some have added a fourth L word, legend, to that list. But the belief, which is essentially saying that Jesus was not even a real human being, or even a real individual in history, not a historical figure, this is obviously a pretty fringe position. Most people believe Jesus at least lived. If they don't believe anything else about him, they believe that he was actually a real person. He was an atheist, as I mentioned, as a young man, and as he grew up, probably in his 30s was when he mentions he had his conversion to Christianity, and he credits that to J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, you know him, of Lord of the Rings fame and The Hobbit as well. He recounts part of his conversion in the book Surprised by Joy. And there he's noting that at the time, he says, I was the most reluctant convert in all of England. So he was really opposed to Christianity, but Tolkien got him to come around. And Tolkien actually hoped that Lewis would become a Roman Catholic upon his conversion to Christianity, but Lewis actually remained a faithful Anglican, thanks be to God, until his death. In 1961, he suffered from inflammation of the kidneys, and that essentially resulted in a blood poisoning. And then he died at age 64 on an interesting date, November 22nd, 1963. And he's buried in the churchyard at Holy Trinity Church in Oxford. So Lewis is again, the first in our series here. I have a number of other characters and individuals to talk about in the future, but he's the first one in the series of what I would say these are Anglicans you didn't know you knew. He is well known. He's well loved by so many Christians from all walks of life, all walks of the faith. And he was also an academician. He was a poet. He was an essayist. He had a lot of things to look to Lewis for. Reading Lewis will give you an idea of just one of the great minds that is in the Anglican tradition. And he's influenced the church. He's influenced many Christians, both in America and, of course, in Great Britain and around the world for close to 90 years now, if you take from the time he started to really begin writing and telling about his early life, about 90 years of influence. So we are blessed and honored to have C.S. Lewis in the Anglican tradition and to claim him as one of ours.